Yo, if you're someone that's easily triggered, then don't watch this video. A young lad messaged me regarding the horrific abuse his mother suffered. He's received her blessing. He's messaged me everything that's happened to her in her life, and he wants me to make a video on it to highlight the abuse that she's gone through and what so many women out here suffer. So this is what he says. This is a family thing. My mother is mixed race. She was raised by her father here in Bradford. She wasn't told that she's mixed race. Her father was remarried and had children from his Pakistani wife. However, the stepmother used to mistreat my mother to the point she'll sit my mother separate from the other children despite my mother cleaning their nappies and doing the house chores. The stepmother would beat my mother and force her to drink water that had Tawi's black magic in it. The ink of the water would flow into the water and my mother would be forced to drink it. My mother would get beaten with a hot tava and rolling pin and regularly drowned in the bath by the stepmother. My mother wasn't allowed to have a relationship with her father. She thought she was adopted. Whilst all this was going on, she was being abused by a man who was forcing himself upon her. Abuse by the stepmother's older nephew, who was like 26 and my mother was 9 years old. Nobody really cared about her. Her father was always at work. Whilst this was happening, my mother's stepsister, who was 6 years old, who is full Pakistani, was getting abuse too. The stepmother didn't know this. It continued for many years. My mother would work in the family's takeaway and miss school as she had to do home chores and cook. Sometimes the founder of a restaurant in Bradford that I won't name because maybe he doesn't want to be associated with this, used to take her to school. My mother told a teacher at school she wasn't safe at home and she was being abused by a one-eyed man. So they asked the stepmother to come to the school and they told the teacher that she's lying. When my mother went home, she got told off by a stepmother and my mother's father was there and the stepmother was saying your daughter is causing issues despite my mother only being 14 years old. Whilst this conversation was taking place, a little voice said she's abusing me too. That voice was my mother's stepsister who is full Pakistani. So then my mother got beats from the stepmother. They took my mother out of school and planned her forced marriage to the brother of the abuser and forced her to live with the in-laws. The marriage went on to experience domestic violence. My mother wasn't happy about the marriage at age 15, Islamic nikah, and then civil marriage at 16 to give this man to enable his citizenship to the UK. My mother was forced to remain in the marriage for family honour and nowhere out, but one day we attended a wedding and after the mehndi my grandfather took us home to collect nappies for my baby brother and the locks were changed and subsequently became homeless and divorce was filed. Prior to this, my mother was forced to have a forced sterilisation to stop her having future children. She already had a traumatic life. At the same time, they wanted my mother's stepsister to marry the abuser's other brother. She's seen how my mother was being treated and the full Pakistani sister planned to go university and never came home. She went on to marry a white man and left Islam and disowned from the family. The stepmother hated my mother more because she was Muslim and half white and her daughter, full Pakistani, has now left Islam. We went on to living in women refugees and moved around a lot to escape the violence. My mother tried getting justice after her father departed this world, but nobody would speak up. However, the man that abused her, forced himself on her against his will, died last year due to cancer in the private parts. Wow, so he abused her, forced himself upon her, then look at the way he departed this world, he got cancer in the private parts. The stepmother is still alive. My mother suffers from mental health and a couple of years ago we had Ruqya done on her and she had gym problems going back many years. They destroyed her life only because she's mixed race. My grandfather was controlled and prevented to have a relationship with his daughter. My step-aunt, she has mental health too. Bro, it's a long story, it all happened in Bradford. I remember my father locking me and my brothers in the cellar with rats in there and he'd beat my mother. We believe that he listened to his auntie, my mother's stepmother, to destroy her life. My mother was a single parent from age 22 and she got married at 15. Over the years, I've heard this story from multiple sources and relatives have even told me that my mother was mistreated. One time, a woman for Legit Green was in Kirgate Centre and she saw my mother and said, "Are you the daughter of so-and-so?" mentioning my grandfather and my mother. And she said, "Yes, you are auntie so-and-so." I won't say the name that he put. And she told me to look after your mother. She had a tough childhood. My mother would run to her household from Leglands Lane after getting beats from the stepmother. My mother has tried icing herself and ending her own existence over the years, and even last night said to me, "Putter, I'm scared I will depart this world due to taking my own soul." Really appreciate the empathy. If you can please, I did ask my mother and she wants others to learn from the types of violence that occurs and the detrimental impact on those that experience this sort of thing. So like I say, it was a very long essay that this guy sent me. And as you can see, the man's mother sadly suffered, a very, very hard traumatic life. The stepmother would separate her from the other kids because she was mixed race. She was 9 years old and she was getting abused by someone who was 26 years old. She was neglected. She was beaten up. And when I read this paragraph or this essay that this man sent to me, it put things into perspective, because how many times do we complain about trivial things in life? Lost this money here, someone walked my car and drove off, this happened and that happened. And look what this woman's gone through. Look at the harsh realities that she's had to face in her life, the absolute traumatic difficulties that she's gone through. And this sadly isn't a single solitary case. How many women out here have suffered abuse, domestic abuse, financial abuse, mental abuse? They've been neglected, they've had forced marriages, they've been divorced, they've had to marry someone so he can come over and get his stay, then he's left her on bounce or he's beat her up. So it just puts things into perspective of what women out here are facing. And this brother says to me, look, you've got a platform. Can I forward this story to you? I've got my mother's blessing, and can you post it and shed some light on it of like everyone deals with things in their own way. Maybe if this story gets out there now and I've made this video for them, perhaps they'll find a little bit of peace with it. Perhaps it'll shed some light on the suffering that women are going through. But I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants peace and strength to the woman and to everyone that was affected by this. And I pray that in the afterlife they are granted the highest ranks of Jannah and they gain the companionship of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so that they when they look back upon the trials of this earth, they won't even remember the pain that they felt, because they're in the highest ranks of Jannah. I honestly believe, inshallah, that they will be recompensed for all the pain that they've suffered here, and they'll have gardens of paradise as their eternal abode.